think it's a historical moment, and the first time we're live from the studio. And a special guest today in our studio is Christian Fischer.
Hello.
You are a CEO and co-founder of Bcomp, and you are known in the market of motorsports manufacturing and automakers for creating new sustainable materials, reinforcement solutions using natural materials.
That's right.
How did you come up with the whole project? What's your story? You're late maybe in the field of flux, thinking that you will provide these solutions to McLaren, Porsche. What's your story?
You could think that, but actually, we have a very cheesy garage startup story in the sense that my co-founder and I, we both were students or PhD students at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, working on the composite materials, and we had this passion to build lightweight skis. And so in that process, we came across
lightweight to go faster.
Yeah, he liked to go faster or easier uphill, and then enjoying the ride down, let's say. And in this process of making the skis as a structure more efficient in terms of performance per weight ratio, we came across flax, which is a tremendous. All spectators know flax from the linen shirts we wear in summer.
Yeah.
So it's a fiber that's available and has great mechanical properties. However, you need to be smart about how you engineer with it in order to make a technical reinforcement fabric to build lightweight materials, in comparison to making a textile fabric for home textiles or fashion. So that's really where we developed our core competency. So from this garage project, we really started Bcomp, the company, with a product targeted at the ski industry. So 2011, when we founded, we said, okay, we have a solution that allows the ski manufacturers to take out up to 30% of their skis. But then, of course, we understood also that the ski market has its limitations, and we knew that we could actually develop that technology further to feed into large-scale industries, which are typically race cars, but then eventually large-scale mobility, so passenger cars as we know it from everyday life.
How, for automakers, why would they be interested in these materials? Is it because it's cheaper? Is it stronger or stiffer? Or is it just because it's sustainable? What's the why?
So the why, and I think it's a very important point in terms of the sustainability. We might get back to that point later on, but it was very clear 10 years ago when we started the company that no market out there, nobody would pay us a premium for the green aspect of things. So it was very clear also, and we're a very performance-driven company from scratch, very engineering driven. And it was very clear that we wanted to develop solutions that outperform the benchmark. So our business is really consists of replacing standard engineering materials. It could be plastic, it could be metals, it could be carbon fiber composites, and making things lighter. That's the core of what Bcomp does. So we deliver lightweighting. Then depending on what niche or what sector we target, typically we see a picture of a Porsche race car for body panels. So we see our materials being used in body parts of the car. Then we match the performance in terms of pure engineering metrics. So mechanical performance per weight, which is really the driving force. We match the performance of carbon, but we come with a great USP, which is safety, in the sense that the material doesn't shatter when you have contact during a race. So we remove a risk factor in racing, which
this is where you outperform.
Exactly. So we outperform carbon there, and then we come with a cost benefit where we take out 30% of material cost when compared to carbon. In this example, so it's the same technology platform, same idea, reinforcing structures with a natural fiber, with the flax fibers. But there clearly the USP is weight reduction. So we take out up to 60% weight compared to the plastic part. So now we talk not about the exterior body panels anymore, but about interior. Think of door panels or instrument panels. So we're moving weight, and as I said, we talk about 50-60%. So it's great benefit. And then also something that has come up now in recent years, where the customers become more and more sensitive to is that we remove a lot of plastic. So of course there's a big debate about
many companies are declaring going plastic, going without plastic by 2030.
Exactly. So clearly, and I think the European Commission's ban of single-use plastic by 2021 is the first step in that direction. And we will see legislations also, strongly reducing or forcing in the industry to reduce the use of virgin plastic. So that's a new USP, I would say, that has come up now in recent months and years due to that.
So your technology solutions is called Power Rips and Reflex. So how can we recycle them after those materials, or have another reutilization of the materials?
Yeah. So we think really in terms of the footprint of our material. If you look at the start, that when we start producing the material, then it's use phase. So for instance, when it's actually being used on a car, and then what happens afterwards. So if you think of the interior application, we use a so-called polypropylene, so it's a recyclable polymer to start with. So we can take out the part, shred it, and then make what we call a compound out of it, and make a new part out of it. Now, one key question, and we might elaborate on that also, is a bit, who is in charge? Because already today, again, the European Commission, there is clear law saying that every single car sold in Europe needs to be recyclable up to 85% and reusable up to 95%, which is not, it's a good start, but nobody's really in charge, actually is responsible to actually doing it. So they just force automakers to think of that when they actually build the car. Now, coming back to your question in terms of recycling, so one way to recycle our materials is to shred it, and then you can injection mold it into a second life cycle for a new part. In terms of, if we compare now the body parts, we talked about motorsports before. If we look at the carbon that we replace there, carbon today cannot be recycled, so it ends up in landfill typically. Where let's say we have an option, the first end-of-life option, which consists of actually burning the material and regenerating the heat. So we have something that's very close to closed cycle in the sense that the flax fibers absorb CO2 when they grow. So we start with a negative CO2 budget, if you like, and then of course we need energy to transform the flax fibers into the high-performance reinforcement material, and then eventually our customers make the parts. So that's where we add CO2 emissions, of course, during that process. So we're not. It's not what we would call a fully closed cycle in the sense that there is no CO2 toll. There is a slight toll, but it's already a massive step from carbon, which ends up in landfill, which is really a pure.
Sure. How long do you think? How far are we from a full circular vehicle?
So I think if we refer to a full circularity as a supply chain, that instead of starting with a, let's say, fossil-based material and then ending up as a waste, a useless waste, and we transform that supply chain into something circular, where we actually can reuse the materials, dismantle the product into its elementary materials at the end of the cycle, and then feed these materials into a second cycle. As I said before, the legal base, and if you look typically at the car industry, is actually doing quite a good job in creating that platform. Now, I think what everybody must be aware of is that actually, so as I said before, nobody's really responsible yet. So there's no legal framework saying the car makers has to actually deal with the car at the end of the life cycle and do the recuperation, dismantling of the car and feeding it into new supply chains. And I think that's a key point, because eventually that has a cost. So
sustainability has a cost.
That has a cost.
For sure.
I think that must be very, very clear to everybody. So I would say if the legal framework was there, or would actually enforce that, then we could have something that's very close to a circular car within 2 or 3 years. I think, so that's quite interesting that the car industry actually has a platform that's there, waiting for it to be adapted and forced into that circularity model. If we now go further and say circularity per se is not enough, we actually need to become sustainable, where then you have the CO2 emission that comes into play. Just to give you an example, the aluminum supply chain does quite a good job at actually recycling aluminum, but there's so much energy actually used in making primary aluminum.
Totally, yeah.
That so then the question is, well, how many CO2 are emitted in terms of energy usage to make the element. So if you don't have a renewable energy source to start with, you're not really solving the problem, all of the problem by the circularity. So that's in the next question. When will we be able to have a car that actually is at basically full decarbonized and we have a zero footprint?
Yeah, we're in a big transition
Exactly.
period, and I think pandemic also brought this issue of sustainability closer on the board.
I think very much so, and I think we see a big difference already since 18-24 months, with Friday for Futures and the younger, the X and Y generations coming up now, coming into the job market. Also, we feel it at Bcomp that the why, the purpose of the company and of the job is very central to the career decision of young people, and so that personally gives me a lot of hope that we actually are going to make the switch, because there's so much pressure now from really the consumer. That we, and then also translating into financial markets where ESG now is exponentially increasing, where people understand that this old school linear economy model we've been celebrating now for decades, it's obsolete, and we cannot continue like that. So and clearly the pandemic has further fueled that. We can feel that projects we were involved with based on let's say the old model, typically in the car industry based on internal combustion cars, those have taken a hit, but then the projects we're involved in, which go push towards electrification and the sustainability mindset, that's clearly accelerated.
I have a small business question related to the project itself, because I'm sure you founded the company in 2011, and it took time to approach big companies, big sharks like McLaren, Tesla, Porsche, so that they can try and test your materials to the point when they say, okay, yes, let's do it.
Yeah.
How long did it take?
I mean, we found it 10 years ago, when it's clear that we started really focusing on attracting and acquiring these customers 3 to 4 years ago. Nevertheless, the 6 years before were very important, because when we actually got to the stage where we started to market towards and raise awareness towards those brands and those markets, we had already built some credibility with our sports and leisure heritage, let's say. So if you ask me purely how much did it take from the very first contact until actually getting our fuel solution on such cars, I would tell you, and typically, Porsche is a beautiful example where we really use that motorsports platform, which is very dynamic with a very short design cycle.
Yeah, because you already entered in motorsports.
Exactly, and that took us 8 months from the first contact.
Okay.
But it took us 8 months because we were ready in terms of the product. It was not technology status anymore. We had a technology readiness level that was high enough to actually feed it directly into production, and where we were able then 8 months later, after first contact, to actually deliver the product to the customer. So but I would say, if you're ready with the product and you have credibility that you actually are going to be able to deliver, then the motorsport sector is a tremendous platform in terms of time to market.
A very good example.
Yeah. Clearly. Then of course the road, road cars, that's much a longer process. But they're also the motorsports sector still, and I think it will be that more again in the future, is a vector and accelerated to access actually the road cars.
The most important that we're in the right direction. That's
exactly
the bottom line. Oh, thank you, Christian, for sharing your insights, and thank you for watching this episode of Inside Tomorrow here in the studio of Bcomp TV, going direct live here, and stay tuned to our next episode of coming live from the studio next week.